The entire ballroom went silent as three girls surrounded her, ripping the hem of her dress while everyone filmed. They didn't know that the quiet black girl they'd tormented for years had spent every evening after school training in a discipline that would make this night unforgettable. Simone Carter had always been invisible at Riverside Academy, and that was exactly how she preferred it. The prestigious private school on the north side of the city was a world away from the small apartment she shared with her grandmother on the south side. Every morning she took two buses to get there, arriving early enough to avoid the parking lot scene where students showed off their luxury cars and designer outfits. She'd slip into the library, finish her homework, and prepare herself for another day of being the scholarship kid who didn't quite fit in. It had been 2 years since her mother passed away from cancer, 2 years since Simone's world had collapsed and then slowly, painfully rebuilt itself into something different. Her grandmother did her best, but money was always tight. Simone worked evenings at Murphy's Diner downtown, serving coffee and clearing tables to help with bills. The other students at Riverside didn't know about that job, and she intended to keep it that way. They already had enough ammunition to mock her with. Brittany Van Horn made sure of that. With her platinum blonde hair, designer wardrobe, and family name that appeared on buildings throughout the city, Brittany was Riverside royalty. She'd made Simone her personal project since freshman year, finding creative ways to remind her that she didn't belong. It started small, pointed comments about Simone's thrift store clothes, accidental shoulder bumps in the hallway. By senior year, it had escalated into a systematic campaign of humiliation. Drinks spilled on homework, exclusion from group projects despite Simone having the highest grades, whispered conversations that stopped the moment Simone walked by, followed by laughter. Brittany's friends, Madison and Courtney, were eager participants in every scheme. They'd take photos of Simone eating alone in the cafeteria and post them with cruel captions. They'd spread rumors about why she was really at Riverside, suggesting everything from affirmative action to charity cases. The teachers either didn't notice or chose not to intervene, perhaps intimidated by the Van Horn family's generous donations to the school. What nobody knew was that every day at 3:30, when classes ended, Simone disappeared to a place where she wasn't invisible at all. Down a narrow staircase in a converted basement gym on the south side, past the faded posters of boxing legends and the smell of worn leather, Simone became someone else entirely. For 4 years, she'd been training in Muay Thai and Krav Maga under Coach Rivera, a retired MMA fighter with scarred knuckles and a gentle soul. Coach Rivera had met Simone 3 months after her mother's funeral, when she'd wandered into his gym looking for something she couldn't name. He saw something in her eyes that day, a mixture of grief and fire, and offered to train her for free. "You've got warrior blood," he'd told her. "Let me help you find it." The training became her therapy, her escape, her salvation. Every punch she threw into the heavy bag was another piece of pain released. Every defensive technique she mastered was another layer of armor against a world that seemed determined to hurt her. She was good, better than good. Within 2 years, she'd won her first regional youth championship. By senior year, she held multiple titles in her division, but she never told anyone at school. That part of her life was separate, sacred, untouchable by the cruelty of Riverside Academy. Simone Carter, the scholarship student, and Simone Carter, the fighter, existed in two different worlds, and she intended to keep it that way, until prom night. Simone had saved for 6 months to buy the emerald green dress hanging in her grandmother's closet. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever owned, and when she put it on that evening, her grandmother cried. "Baby, you look just like your mama did at her prom," she whispered, adjusting the straps with trembling fingers. "She'd be so proud of you." Simone fought back her own tears, not wanting to ruin her makeup. Her mother had always told her that holding your head high was the most powerful thing a black woman could do in a world that constantly tried to make you feel small. She arrived at the hotel ballroom alone. Her only real friend, Jasmine, had moved to Atlanta last month, leaving Simone more isolated than ever. The moment she walked through the doors, she felt the shift in energy. Phones came out immediately. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. She saw Brittany across the room, gorgeous in white, whispering something to Madison that made them both laugh while looking directly at her. Simone made her way to a corner table, trying to become invisible again. But then something unexpected happened. Tyler Bennett, the school's star basketball player, appeared at her side. "Want to dance?" he asked, extending his hand. Simone's heart skipped. Tyler had always been kind to her in private, helping her pick up books she'd dropped, giving her genuine smiles in the hallway, but he'd never acknowledged her publicly, never defended her when his friends joined in the mockery. Still, she took his hand. They moved to the dance floor, and for a brief shining moment, Simone let herself believe the night might actually be okay. Then Brittany cut in, microphone in hand, and Simone's stomach dropped. "Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention?" Brittany's voice echoed through the sound system, sugary, sweet, and venomous. "I think it's time we played a little game. It's called Who Doesn't Belong." The crowd laughed, uncertain at first, then louder as they realized where this was going. Tyler stepped back, and Simone saw the guilt flash across his face even as he retreated into the safety of the crowd. What happened next was calculated cruelty at its finest. Brittany had prepared a slideshow, and it began playing on the screens around the ballroom. Photos of Simone at Murphy's Diner in her uniform, her small house, her grandmother's old car, pictures of her mother from the obituary. Each image was met with gasps, laughter, or uncomfortable silence. Simone stood frozen, watching her private life being paraded for entertainment, feeling more exposed than she'd ever felt in the fighting ring. "I mean, it's cute that she tried," Brittany continued, circling Simone like a predator. "But let's be honest, some people just aren't meant for places like this." Madison and Courtney moved in, flanking Simone from both sides. The crowd had formed a circle now, everyone filming, capturing every moment for social media immortality. "Maybe you should go back where you belong," Brittany said, reaching out to touch Simone's dress. The fabric tore with a sickening sound. Courtney accidentally shoved her toward the punch bowl. Simone stumbled but caught herself, punch splashing down the front of her dress. The emerald green, her beautiful, saved-for, cherished dress, was ruined. She stood there, dripping and torn, surrounded by phones and laughter and the weight of every humiliation she'd endured for 4 years. A teacher was trying to push through the crowd, but students blocked the way, not wanting to miss the show. This was the moment they'd all been waiting for, the moment the scholarship girl would finally break. Then Brittany made her fatal mistake. "At least your mother doesn't have to watch this disaster. She's probably grateful she—" Something shifted in Simone's eyes. The warrior blood Coach Rivera had spoken about didn't just flow, it ignited. But instead of tears, instead of running, Simone smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been holding back for so long and had finally been given permission to stop. "Let me show you where I belong," Simone said quietly. Her voice was steady, almost calm, and somehow that was more terrifying than if she'd screamed. Brittany, emboldened by the crowd's support, shoved Simone again. This time, Simone didn't stumble. In one fluid motion that seemed almost lazy in its ease, she deflected the shove, sidestepped, and repositioned herself with the grace of a water flowing around a stone. The crowd's laughter faltered. Courtney, not understanding what had just happened, reached out to grab Simone's arm. Simone executed a perfect wrist lock, gentle enough not to hurt, firm enough that Courtney couldn't break free, technical enough that anyone with martial arts training would recognize it as expert-level skill. "Let go of me," Courtney yelped, and Simone did, smoothly releasing her and stepping back. Madison charged forward, hands outstretched, and Simone simply moved. It looked like dancing the way she flowed aside, leaving Madison grasping at air and stumbling forward into the space where Simone had been a heartbeat before. The ballroom had gone completely silent except for the sound of the music still playing in the background. Every phone was still recording, but the narrative had changed. This wasn't a helpless victim anymore. This was something else entirely. The principal finally broke through the crowd, looking flustered and angry. "What is going on here?" he demanded. Simone turned to him, her posture relaxed but somehow radiating controlled power. I didn't start this, sir, but I can finish it, she said calmly. Brittany, her face flushed with rage and embarrassment at how completely the situation had slipped from her control, made one last desperate move. She drew back her hand and swung at Simone's face, putting all her frustrated fury into the slap. Simone caught her wrist midair. The sound of the catch echoed in the silent room, a sharp smack of palm against wrist. She held Brittany's arm there, suspended, without visible effort. Brittany struggled, but she might as well have been pulling against a steel bar. I've been training for 4 years, Simone said, her voice carrying across the ballroom in the profound silence. Muay Thai, Krav Maga. I'm a regional youth champion. I could have hurt you any time I wanted. Any of you. Her eyes swept the crowd, and students who'd been laughing minutes ago couldn't meet her gaze. I chose not to. Every single day I chose not to. That's the difference between us, Brittany. You use your power to hurt people. I use mine to protect myself without becoming like you. She released Brittany's wrist and the girl stumbled backward. Someone in the crowd gasped. Wait, that's the girl from the championship videos. Phones came out again, but this time for frantic Google searches instead of mockery. Within seconds, videos of Simone in the ring began appearing on screens throughout the ballroom. Simone throwing devastating combinations, Simone executing perfect takedowns, Simone standing victorious with medals around her neck and her fist raised. The energy in the room transformed completely. The students who'd been filming her humiliation were now watching her competition footage with dropped jaws. The ones who'd laughed were now silent, realization dawning on their faces that they'd been tormenting someone who could have destroyed them all with her bare hands but had chosen restraint instead. Coach Rivera appeared in the doorway and the crowd parted for him automatically. He was wearing his gym jacket, the one covered in patches from martial arts organizations around the world. Simone's grandmother had called him, worried when Simone hadn't answered her phone. He took in the scene with one sweeping glance, the torn dress, the punch stains, the circled phones, Simone standing in the center like a warrior queen in a battlefield. That's my student, he said, his voice carrying authority that made even the principal straighten up. Best fighter I've trained in 20 years. She's taken down grown men twice her size in the ring, but she didn't defend herself against you because she has something none of you have demonstrated tonight. Honor. The shame that settled over the ballroom was palpable. Tyler looked like he wanted to disappear. Brittany was crying now, but they were tears of humiliation rather than remorse. The principal started talking about consequences and calling parents, but Simone barely heard him. She was suddenly exhausted, the adrenaline draining away and leaving her hollow. Coach Rivera put his jacket around her shoulders, covering the ruined dress. Let's get you home, champion, he said softly. As they walked toward the exit, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. No one spoke, no one tried to stop them, and every single phone in that room was still recording, but now they were capturing something very different. Dignity in the face of cruelty, strength wielded with restraint, and a black girl who'd been underestimated walking out with her head held impossibly high. By the time Simone got home, the videos had gone viral, but it wasn't the humiliation that was trending, it was her response. The footage of her catching Brittany's slap midair had been viewed millions of times. The hashtag Simone Strong was everywhere. Comments poured in from people around the world, from other fighters, from people who'd been bullied, from parents showing their children what real strength looked like. The next morning, a woman in an expensive suit knocked on Simone's door. She introduced herself as Diane Patterson, a sports agent who specialized in combat sports athletes. "You're the talk of every gym in the country right now," she said. "I have sponsorship offers, scholarship opportunities, and an invitation for you to try out for the Olympic Development Program." Simone stood there in her grandmother's doorway, still processing everything from the night before, trying to understand how her world had shifted so dramatically in just a few hours. But Diane wasn't finished. "There's something else," she said, pulling an envelope from her bag. "I was at that prom last night. My niece attends Riverside. I filmed everything from a different angle, and I was prepared to use it if needed. But that's not the real reason I'm here." She paused, her professional demeanor softening. "I knew your mother, Simone. We grew up together. Before she passed, she contacted me and asked me to keep an eye on you. She knew you were special. She knew you'd face challenges. And she made me promise that when you were ready, I'd help you reach your full potential." Simone's grandmother appeared behind her, tears already streaming down her face. Diane handed Simone the envelope. Inside was a letter in her mother's handwriting, the sight of which made Simone's knees weak. She sank onto the front steps to read it. "My dearest Simone," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm already gone, and I'm so sorry I won't be there to see the incredible woman you're becoming, but I know you, baby. I know you have a warrior's heart. The world is going to try to break you because you're black, because you're a woman, because you're brilliant, and they're threatened by that. But you were built to stand when others try to knock you down. Coach Rivera has been teaching you how to fight with your hands. Now I need you to learn to fight with your whole self, your mind, your voice, your unshakable dignity. Make them see you, make them respect you, but never ever become cruel like them. Strength without compassion is just violence. You're better than that. You've always been better than that. I love you forever. Mom." Beneath the letter was a bank book. Her mother had been secretly saving money for years, putting away small amounts from every paycheck, every tax return, every birthday gift. It was enough to cover her grandmother's medical bills and then some, enough to ensure Simone could accept the scholarship without worrying about leaving her grandmother behind. 6 months later, Simone stood in an elite training facility, preparing for her Olympic trial match. Her grandmother sat in the front row, healthy and beaming with pride. Coach Rivera was in her corner, giving last-minute technical advice. And in the audience, keeping a respectful distance, was Tyler. He'd reached out several times with genuine apologies, and while Simone had accepted them, she'd made it clear their friendship would never be the same. Some betrayals, even passive ones, left permanent marks. The match was intense, but Simone fought with a clarity she'd never experienced before. Every technique was precise, every movement held purpose. When her hand was raised in victory, she looked up at the lights and thought about her mother, about that night at prom, about every person who'd ever tried to make her feel small. As she left the ring, reporters clamored for interviews. "Simone? How does it feel to overcome everything you've faced?" one shouted. She paused, considering her words carefully. "They tried to shame me for being different," she said, her voice steady and clear. "For being poor, for being black, for being alone. But I was never weak. I was training. The quiet girl they mocked was becoming a warrior, and when they finally pushed too far, I didn't use my fists. I used something more powerful: dignity. Because real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about standing tall when they try to knock you down. My name is Simone Carter, and this is just the beginning." The story spread further after that interview. Schools began using it in their anti-bullying programs. Young fighters cited her as inspiration. And somewhere in a mansion on the north side of the city, Brittany Van Horn watched the interview in her room, processing what her cruelty had cost her and who she'd have to become to ever forgive herself. But that was Brittany's journey to take. Simone had already moved forward, carrying her mother's words, her grandmother's love, and Coach Rivera's lessons into a future that suddenly looked limitless. She'd learned that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet person in the corner who's been building themselves up while others tear them down. And sometimes the most powerful punch you can throw is the one you choose not to deliver. Because real warriors know that true strength comes not from violence, but from the courage to remain dignified in the face of cruelty, to show grace when vengeance would be easier, and to rise above hatred without letting it change who you are. That was the lesson Simone Carter learned, and that was the lesson she'd spend the rest of her life teaching others. One fight, one victory, one moment of compassionate strength at a time.